Yeah, so my position is that banning TikTok is not something that I would support at this time. I'm always open-minded to hearing the reasons, but I do suspect that the reasons are slightly different than what certain actors are saying that it is. So they say it's a national security threat, but a lot of politicians have actually admitted that there are plenty of other reasons why they want to ban the site, and there a few of those are what I want to go over here. So first of all, TikTok has complied with almost everything that the U.S. has asked from it, besides selling the company to a U.S. firm. And as soon as the ban was announced, we had cronies come out of the closet from places like Microsoft and Walmart that were ready to put a group together to buy the site. Frankly, they were frothing at the mouth to do so. And you even had a guy from the Trump administration that was building his own team to do it. And, you know, pretty likely that he probably would have won the bid there. Um, but we have enough information coming from those giant corporations anyway. And I really personally wouldn't want like them to own TikTok and control the information coming out of it, because what's the point in that, right? Because TikTok actually allows certain anti-American content that I really wouldn't see anywhere else. I feel the same thing about RT, which is Russia Today, and their ban in the U.S. I suspect that politicians in America have an extreme interest in cutting off information like this because they can't exactly control what is said on those sites. Even though TikTok has complied largely with the Americans on what they want to do with content moderation, but they've actually proved that things like the Palestinian pro-Palestinian content on the site is not an artificial creation of the Chinese company. Instead, there's just a lot of young users on the site that are posting, pro-Palestine content on there, and they pretty much refuse to, take all of that down. So I think that there is a lot of information on there that we would lose access to if you were to ban it, because it's not a U.S. company. So Senator Pete Ricketts and Marco Rubio have actually admitted that they want the TikTok ban because there's too much pro-Palestine content on the platform. You could even say somebody like Nikki Haley say the same thing as well. So they also can't really compete with TikTok in the U.S. right now. If you look on Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts, you're basically just going to find reposted TikTok content on there. And they've been trying to grab the same sorts of population for those sites, and it hasn't been working so far. So they have an extreme interest in cutting out that competition and getting their market share back. Um, so finally, I don't think that there's any evidence that TikTok is spyware. I'm sure they've had some security concerns in the past, but the type of data that they're collecting is not very far and above what's going on other social media sites. At least I can't find any information that says that it is. And basically, from what I see, they're collecting data so that they can suggest content and also sell people low quality Chinese goods. So banning TikTok instead of passing some sort of legislation protecting user information is insane to me and frankly not productive. It doesn't solve data collection by any other foreign apps. It doesn't solve data privacy. It doesn't stop Chinese companies from putting data collection on websites that aren't even owned by Chinese companies. It doesn't stop them from collecting information from 5G towers where they have their technology installed. That alone might be a better thing to go after because it collects more data than TikTok. All of those options that I just said there. So I think that people are taking an unnatural focus on TikTok, basically because they hate it. It's a horrible stopgap proposed by people, just because they simply want to get rid of TikTok. And I totally understand that because the content on the site is largely brain rot and kind of for kids. But I do feel we are at risk if we get rid of this site and other sites like it of putting up an American Iron Curtain or an American style Chinese firewall that'll keep our citizens under the complete control of our info brokers. Um, and that's not a world that I want to live in. I want access to more information, not less. And even if it comes with some consequences to our privacy that, frankly, we're giving up voluntarily. So the last thing that I would want to do, to just explain why I think this, is compare TikTok to an actual spyware, Pegasus software, which is an Israeli spyware that they sell to all kinds of companies. They sold it to the leader of Saudi Arabia, and he used it to hack Jeff Bezos's phone, for example. And Pegasus could be on your phone right now, and you wouldn't know it. We largely know everything that TikTok can do and what it's doing. Um, and we download and interact with it ourselves. So basically, the only real concern is that China has a rule that Chinese companies, if they ask for the data, they have to provide it to the Chinese government. But they already moved their servers to the U.S. and they have backup servers in Singapore, so they wouldn't have to comply with that. And if they ever did comply with that, then I would support a ban pretty much right away. And I honestly think China knows that. And I think that they want the revenue coming back from the site. They want people to buy stuff on it and that money to come back to China. I don't think they have much interest in getting rid of that relationship, which is why they've actually complied with a bunch of our, frankly, crazy demands for the site. And it's just the final demand of selling it to a U.S. company that they don't want to do. So I would say to America, if they want to try to outcompete TikTok, great. But banning it definitely risks putting us in a place where we only have access to information that comes out of our country and we don't get access to information from anywhere else. And I don't want to live in a world where you have one side of the aisle banning everything because they think it's from China and the other side banning everything because they think it's from Russia. That is a wild world that I just don't want to live in. So that's my basic point there.
Yeah, I I probably agree with you on a lot there. Um, I think we probably end pretty close to the same spot, but we will have a couple of hiccups here and there. So
And I guess
I
it's time to
guess
get into the debate. So
I guess
is
what I what I would say, my view on the whole legality of it is that like TikTok was designed number one to like get views and get popular. Like they paid people to influence. They went and recruited good-looking people to make videos and do like little dance videos, knowing that dance videos was something that basically people didn't have to think about in order to make a video on. So they did that, and they made this. I want to say they call it the taste of fame by pushing virality out of like these accounts. And then I just think that if we get to the point where this company is designed to be as popular as it can be, as addictive as it can be, and it did have a lot of security concerns. It and most of this was basically just swept under the rug. It feels like, but or at this point, I guess, um, when it first came in like 2017, they made $1 billion offer to get Musically to get it in here to get a bunch of user like a base out of America. And then I don't know. I guess I just think about it. If you get everybody all on one side, or I guess not one side, but if you get everybody all like on just like one site like that, and you give the power to an adversary government like China that like we we banned the Huawei stuff because we were scared that it was going to try to hack us. There was a hack today on Verizon and AT&T to get a bunch of data. And when this stuff first came over, it was getting like face print, all your biometrics. It was getting your web browsing data, keystrokes on your phone, and it wasn't just collecting it. It was also sending it on unencrypted data, uh, like when it was doing a transmission. So I think that's a big vulnerability. Even if they fixed it, I think that that shows that China, or at least this private company in China, was. I mean, they paid $1 billion for Musically. They should have been able to like pay to have, you know, things up to standard and not just have like all these bad safety issues with it not having like encrypted stuff going through. And if you think about it as China is gaining a bunch of information, I think I don't want that because I feel like I don't want that in the United States. I don't want the United States government collecting our data. And I guess I can't make a case that we should completely ban just TikTok over it, but I think we need to at least make it to a point where we can't have any data able to be taken by any governments. So right now, China has, and you're right, they did comply. They put a bunch of, or all of the data from U.S. users, they say, in the U.S. in that Project Texas. But they also put a backup data center, I believe, in Singapore at their corporate headquarters. And I very well believe that they could just access all of that through, like, they could just back up the backup server, basically. So I think we need to make a way where they can't get that. And you made a couple of points that I didn't really agree with. First, kind of, I don't know, maybe
Yeah,
halfway
go for it. What
through,
you got?
um, you said that other sites can do the same thing. It almost felt like you were saying that because we have security concerns all over the place with our user data, that we shouldn't, like, this is just another one. And it's, I mean, I guess you maybe you're just trying to make the claim that it's equal to the rest of them, and I'd probably agree with that as a maybe a security concern at this point. But
Yeah.
I would actually no, I would say I give it more of a security risk than anything. But I would give the like Timu and some of these other ones just as much.
Yeah, that's
Um,
that's what I'm saying. Like, is it really more of
like
a risk
all of those
than
should be.
Timu or?
But I also think banning TikTok is. I mean, I don't know, man. It has a whole like it's manipulating. Like we both do sales and understand sales psychology. You even uh like I don't know. I guess I don't think that it should be around if we have or if it's influencing people like that. And it also is a security like there's just a lot. So yeah, I do think it's kind of a little bit more of a security risk than anything else, but not by very much.
Yeah, and that's why I'm extremely suspicious that people have it as a priority. Because like if I
I
asked you
think
a
some of that's
question
worth
like,
worth of being suspicious of. Yeah,
yeah, it's extremely suspicious. And like you do admit too that like all of these politicians are saying that they don't like it because it makes people pro Palestine, right? Like because I've seen I can't even count, you can probably count on two hands or three the amount of people that have said that in our government, and it's clearly a concern on their mind, right?
I mean, I've hated TikTok since it I ever was pushed onto it. I made a TikTok at one point. I probably got all my shit stolen, dude. That's why I get
Yeah,
so many calls.
I
I'm just
mean,
kidding, but
your government's definitely, or the companies, our companies are selling your data as well, for sure, for that purpose. If China's stealing it so they can sell it to people in India to cold call you, like that's pretty standard, to be honest. And that's why I would say, like, I don't understand why we wouldn't make a sweeping rule instead. Like, I would say if you make a sweeping rule and they don't comply with it, you could probably ban TikTok, but why not make a sweeping rule that affects everybody and all our companies, because I don't want them collecting our data in this way, right? Or at least I want them to have it in a more secure place, or the ability to not sell it to the US government, for example. So why is banning TikTok the focus when you could put in a sweeping rule that would affect TikTok and all the others? Can you answer that?
well, if you make a ban for one, I think it makes it a lot easier to ban others. So I guess that makes that point, but also gives you more, which I'd probably agree with, more support to the idea of not wanting that to happen if somebody wants to call it, disinformation or like this is a certain type of without proper evidence.
Yeah,
So
and whenever somebody
I
says
get you
like I
there.
don't want Russia or China influencing our people, like what are we supposed to do? Ban like all contact with Chinese people, or ban contact with all Russian people? I'm pretty sure our government would probably say yes. But that would lead to the world that I described before, where we have this iron curtain, or U.S. firewall that doesn't allow information from other countries to come in, so that they can be the only ones that are allowed to manipulate their people. But the thing is, you can gain some of the best information in the world from your adversaries, right? Like there's a reason why Edward Snowden went over to Russia and then released a bunch of valuable information to us. That information was true. It made us look bad, and that's why Russia liked it. But the fact of the matter is, I would never, ever, ever want our country to ban Edward Snowden from being able to release information to US citizens from Russia, right?
No,
Um,
journalism should be fine. I think we should have all of the like X. I think X, Facebook, like every social media should have to have at least some way to prove that they're not selling data that's outside of a certain grouping. Like, I mean, you can still sell your, some user data for advertising. People like that. They like they like going on Amazon and being able to see what it thinks that they would like. I don't have that big of an issue with that, but where I think it's a big issue, and I think the long term fear is that, and it's what Edward Snowden kind of was pointing out, is that, hey, with the Patriot Act, the U.S. government threw in a bunch of stuff where they essentially can just listen in and collect a bunch of user data. And then technically, it's not legal for them, I believe, to use that user data, but they can legally store it in case of a terrorist threat if they need to backlog and look through and like make a case for somebody. But then they've
yep.
been,
They said they were looking for terrorists. Yep.
and then they found out that uh, there were actually a couple times where they used it just against regular U.S. citizens, no anything, and they just pushed it into the court. And basically, if you didn't have a good enough lawyer to like call it out and pay enough to like have it happen, they just used it against you. So, so if the U.S. government does that, I don't like that, and I'm against that. I also don't want TikTok being the one that's gaining the most information to be able to like get that information to the Chinese government, because I think long term what's going to happen is these AI bots chatbots and these like these learning models are going to be able to take these huge amounts of data, and they're going to be able to like like teach a new AI thing to do some like really wild stuff. And I also, knowing a bunch of like sales psychology, know that people are pretty easily manipulated, and it doesn't take that much. And if you could just control narratives, maybe, I don't know, 10% more than we do right now. I mean, look at this past election. A lot of people gave a sigh of relief for the fact that, actually maybe your vote does count and this whole thing isn't already rigged. A lot of that base comes from, I think, the same thing where you essentially don't want this propaganda machine convincing a high percentage of the population of something. And I think that's exactly what TikTok was designed to be. So I think that's why I think that it's a bit more of a security concern than like people really give it credit for. Is like those are the companies that know the most about you. But I think
Yeah, and
we maybe
that
have a
particular
difference
line,
in how we
that
get
kind of
there.
scares me in a way, like because
What?
um, for example, Obama tried to put in one of the most authoritarian rules that I've ever seen. Luckily, it was reversed after Trump got in, but it was the Countering Disinformation and Propaganda Act, right? Um, and effectively, it would have allowed them to declare U.S. citizens as propaganda for other countries, and that's kind of what people are saying about TikTok is like not necessarily that there's Chinese people on there spreading information, but that China is allowing and this is all it is. They're allowing people to say information on there that the U.S. government would control, right? And that to me is not another country pushing propaganda on us. That is a complete other thing, right? That's maybe some of these people in the US are spouting things that are related to Chinese propaganda or related to Russian propaganda, but they're still US citizens. So you have to counter them with free speech, not banning.
Yeah, I agree. We should find a way to do it without getting rid of free speech. That's why I don't want to incentivize banning it and closing the company down. And that's why I think it should just be, I mean, banned until it gets fixed. It's the U.S. market. Everybody wants to be in it.
Well,
So,
can you think of
like, they're
anything
going to,
else that you would accept besides them selling the company to the US?
and like, if
Would
this
you want
whole
them to
company
get the
came
backup
out,
servers out of Singapore?
yeah,
Is
I
that
want to
would
make
that
sure
be
that I want to
acceptable?
yes, I want no way for them to be able to have access to a foreign government. So my issue is with China that does not exist. You do not have any company that operates in or with China like that. I mean, if it was
Yeah,
like
but
an
Singapore's
American
not in
person,
China. I mean,
sure. I know that. Hold on.
they are allies, but like, I
But
mean,
the guy is all right. I- Do you think that it's possible that the CCP were to take the best spyware program that they could have back access to in the United States, and they would possibly try to place somebody as a CEO as a face to make sure that they could still get access, but to please the Americans? Because that's what I
I
think
mean,
happened.
could be possible, but then you'd have to deal with like the Singapore government as well. Like, I don't know how close their relations are. I know they're close, but they're definitely not like the same place. So, like, I would have to look up other cases to see if like China would pressure that company to do that. But from what I looked up online, um, they have stuff in place to make sure that unauthorized users can't access the information. So unless they have like the most secret backdoor already in place, I think we would know that. And if we knew that, I would be down for the ban. So,
I think
if you have any
they've
evidence of them putting a backdoor in the
they've
server in Singapore that goes directly to the CZP, I'd like to see it.
they've done it with a lot of other companies,
Yeah,
and
and
they've
we were
got
able
caught.
to we were able to see it, and then we caught
Well,
them,
we
and then
caught,
we
but I don't know.
banned
Do you
it,
know the?
right?
I mean, I don't know if it'd be 100% that were caught. You know, that's what like the Chinese are really good at is stealing and like doing these cyber attacks on and like gaining information. That's how they've gotten a lot of their military information. So,
Well,
I
I'd
mean,
be
a
down
lot
to
of it
ban
is
them
probably used.
if they
A
got
lot of the
caught.
spy, a lot of the spyware is probably used just on like our government officials and stuff. But at the same time, I don't know, and I don't want the U.S. government to have a a bunch of user data because I think that they could weaponize that against the people to basically have what they called the deep state control everyone. And I think that's also what China is. There's this whole thing where China and the US are also trying to compete at who can basically out fucking control their populace. And China has this, and it's not like a competitive thing where they both just want to. It seems like it's a thing where they, like, it's a way to have an edge over another country as, like, to take over the world power. So China wants to make their country very efficient. That's why during the lockdowns you saw drones flying around, like surveilling the streets. They have video surveillance everywhere.
They
They're
have
fucking
Skynet,
masters
and they
at it.
call it Skynet.
Yeah, they're masters at it. I don't like, along with what we were talking about, there is, you know, stuff on the 5G network. I just don't like all this happening. I don't like that there's this big spyware app that could just be transmitting to those things. And I'm
Yeah.
sure that we would know if that
There's
were the
no
case.
evidence that
But
TikTok is spyware, though. Like there
the
really isn't.
fact Checkpoint Research came out with the whole thing on the vulnerabilities of how it was over collecting data and not using it in the same way that typical apps were, and that it was a bit alarming. And yeah, they have fixed it. I'm just saying if it was doing that at one point, you know, not great. And yeah, we just need to get rid of all of this stuff from being a part of like access to governments to compile. And I think if they did get a CEO that we knew, I don't care what nation he's from, but well, it just can't be China to be honest, but or North Korea, but really just probably those two. And or if we could just figure out a way to just make sure that they don't have access to any of our back, you know, the back data or to back up the data.
so okay, so if they just got rid of the Singapore, I don't think anybody's really asked them to do that. Um,
I
but
think that was a
I'm
way to
sure
try to push. They originally wanted. I think that was what was like try to get debated with them, and a lot of people were pushing for them because of this. And I'm
we
guessing
pushed
I
for
would
them to
side with
move it to
them.
Singapore, right?
I no, I think they were trying to. Well, that I think there were also people just trying to get it out of there, or they don't like the CEO.
They don't like the yeah.
But
I
I
mean
don't
I
know too much
remember
about it.
the
I feel like it doesn't feel right, and maybe I don't know enough about the that person that is the CEO or any of the people there, but they've been caught using and doing this with other companies in the past. I don't see like why they wouldn't do it with this. Especially like
well
they might not now that or might not try to very much when they know that like there's a magnifying glass on them, but I don't know.
yeah. I mean
I don't have a
I
good fix
they
for it
could
either. So
they could be doing all that, but like I said before, I think more important to China is the money that's coming from TikTok rather than the data. And I think the data is used to get money
that's
personally.
why I lean on the
Um,
issue of it being a more of a long term issue than it is like a right now issue.
yeah, and that's why I would say like I don't understand why people are focusing on that as like a first step because I feel like that's not the first step. That's like something we do down the line if it gets there,
And I do think
Um,
we could do it without like getting rid of free speech or like really having an issue with that because we could just make all of our companies do it at the same time. So we're on the same page there.
yeah, so that's why I'm totally down for like more data security and privacy, but I think them focusing on TikTok is for the other reasons I stated, pro-Palestine content, and then the other one is market share.
So I guess
You know,
that's where I find
companies
it
here.
conflicting though, is that if it so it's like, all right, yes, I can agree that it's not it shouldn't be much more. I mean, we're a little bit off, but I don't think it should be much more of a concern than many other things. But if it's not banned, then we're just like openly allowing the Chinese to gather a bunch of, or possibly gather a bunch of user data from all of Americans to compile to use against us in a AI algorithm.
Well, let me ask you another question then. Do you think that the US has an interest in banning TikTok rather than doing a sweeping rule that says that we need more data privacy on at every place? So, for example, you could basically say that they use TikTok as kind of like a scapegoat for the real problem of data privacy as a whole, because obviously with the even just that Israeli spyware that I talked about, that's not the only way that Israel is collecting data on all of us. I mean, they're collecting data on the US like absolutely crazy, right? It's just we consider them to be our greatest ally, so that's a different concern. But if we made that sweeping rule, then Israel would have a problem collecting our data. The US government would have a problem collecting our data, and the Chinese government would have a problem collecting our data. So what I would say is TikTok a scapegoat so that they don't have to do that and they can just say, like, we get to manipulate our people, we get to collect their data, you don't get to collect their data. I say fuck that. I say you have to make a sweeping rule. I'm not going to let you just ban TikTok.
I feel like you make a point, you make a good point on one end, but that also comes with some baggage. So if you did ban everything all at the same time, then all those countries that you just talked about would be very angry with us. And to I
Wants
guess
to
to your other
continue
point,
collecting our data. Our companies do too.
well, yeah, but I would rather a U.S. company ideally not sell it to foreign countries, and I would like them to store it securely for themselves to use, and I would like for them to not take anything. I think they should make a law that companies operating within the U.S. should not have more than like a certain grouping of data it can collect. And we should start to make rules more around our data privacy of what, like, you'd have to opt into being able to collect GPS data. And then if you want to use Waze or any of the GPS apps, then when you go to do it, it would like very clearly tell you exactly what you're signing up for. And I mean, we do that. That's what your license agreement is, or whatever the I agree is. But that's all in a like 40-page thing. Nobody reads it. Nobody knows what's going on. And we don't have really any regulations around it right now. So they can collect basically whatever they want. And these companies could throw in, like TikTok did, and they can throw in these extra things that are like tracking your you know, your keystrokes on your phone. Dude, you can get all your passwords that way for everything.
Yeah.
So like that's terrible, and we have leaks all over the place. So
Yeah, key
I just
logging
don't
and
think
things like that. It
any,
happened to PlayStation.
yeah, and we should not have any companies gaining any of that. And then if you want to gain something that is stupid like that, I think, but I don't think you should be cut off that complete freedom. But you should be able to, or you should have to, or the company should have to make you like hit a like a, are you sure this is exactly what it is, like
Yeah.
disclaimer.
And to
And
be
then it
clear,
should
I
not
don't.
allowed to be able to get any information from anybody around you. I don't think that there's any like substantial or like great evidence that TikTok did that, but there were claims, and I'm not
Yeah,
100% sure what all would have came out of what it was doing when it first came into the US. Because if the FBI or anybody did find any of that stuff, they wouldn't. I think they would just keep it a secret. So they didn't, like, let everybody know that, hey, we accidentally just let this company just come and steal everything. But
yeah, that's possibly true. And just to be clear, I don't disagree with anything that you said there at all.
I
That's
know,
that's where
yeah,
we
I think
agree
we're
the
on the
most is
same page.
this
We're just
sweeping rule.
different on how we
But
get there, and yeah,
well, let's be clear about where we're at in the debate right now too. So, from my understanding, like what I believe is that we need to do a sweeping rule that affects everybody and not ban TikTok. You believe that we need to ban TikTok and then make a sweeping rule, correct?
I think it's probably one of the more. I think we should make. I think we should push very hard publicly to get TikTok to conform completely and at least be very
Just TikTok?
transparent. To at least to start, that's fine.
Why?
And just be transparent. I think everything that you say is correct. I don't think we should just allow it to get, like, I don't want Microsoft buying it. I don't want things like that. I think we just need to get that company. Like, they didn't want to. They also denied moving and having like a completely separate branch in the U.S. They wanted it all to be together. I'm fairly certain. So like,
Yeah, and then
they just
they
need to.
complied with it and then they still banned it, right? They eventually they caved to like everything
They caved to
almost
almost everything. There's the.
except for selling it to a US firm, which is the thing I don't want.
I don't think it's to a U.S. firm. I think originally they wanted them to move to the U.S. and they said either you. I think you move to the U.S. and have a whole U.S. version, or that they might have also said, you can move it out. And then I think there was skepticism about the CEO that they put forward,
Yeah, do you
which is
remember
Shao
the
Zi
clips of
Chu.
that where they asked him if he was Chinese and he said no, I'm from Singapore, and then they were like,
It was pretty
um,
ridiculous, but I mean,
yeah,
also, I don't know. And that's also that in that same clip that you're talking about is the like legal questioning of the U.S. government, which is basically just a live interrogation, which I don't know, probably pretty entertaining, but a little bit fudged up.
yeah.
But they also said
So
that that's where the proof that they don't give any of that access to China and the CCP is that they just asked that guy and he was like, no, no, we don't, no. And it's like, dude, if that's
so
the best, we don't have anybody over there like analyzing it, so we have no idea.
we don't have people over, I guess, in Singapore, but we have electronic stuff that monitors it to make sure that nobody is unauthorized access to it. Like that's what I understand from reading. Maybe I'm wrong. If somebody wants to, put that out there, I'm definitely down to hear it. But
Yeah,
that's
I don't
definitely
know.
my understanding of it. Now, the only thing that I don't understand is like if a sweeping rule would solve the problem with TikTok and everywhere else, why not just do the sweeping rule? Why work so hard to get a ban first when you could focus your resources on doing the rule that would affect everybody? Um, is there any good reason at all to not focus on that rule and focus instead on getting TikTok banned before you do the rule?
Um, I think I tried to say something about this earlier, and I think I just think that yeah, I think, uh, but
Well, this is leading me to
it's
my final question about it.
well, it's
Could you
okay.
see
Go
how
ahead.
maybe your hatred and bias towards TikTok is maybe clouding your thoughts on banning it, and really we should just do a sweeping rule?
On banning it first, I no, I think it's a
Yeah,
little bit more
like
of a threat than everything else. Number one, And number two, I could ask you if the reason that you don't want to have TikTok gone is because you use it all the time and you're addicted to it. And subconsciously, you want to view it. So we're asking each other basically the same thing on each other's bias. And I think both
That
could be
would be
true.
true if I was addicted to it and used it all the time, but that's definitely not the case.
You use it more. I think you use it more. I don't know. You send me stuff on it all the time. It's basically all you send me.
I don't think that's true at all.
I
I've
don't
sent you a
know.
few over time, but like I don't
Either
that's
way.
not if I go to like the links are all of these TikTok or are most of these Blue Sky, YouTube, The Independent, Time.com, YouTube X, YouTube Daily Mail, YouTube
Oh, you do this all on
X,
a
The Daily
website?
Beast. Well, I see a couple in here that are TikTok, but I'm looking at all the links that I've sent you on our text messages, and the vast majority of them come from other sites. So, yeah, I've
Oh,
definitely sent you
it's
a few
probably just
TikToks
the
before.
it's probably just that the TikToks always don't allow me to watch them because they want me to go create an account, and that's why I remember them
Yeah.
more because it pisses me off.
Yeah, exactly. And like I can see why there's some people that are I know there's some people that are just endlessly scrolling on TikTok, but um it's definitely not like the main app that I use. I can even go to my analytics on my phone, screen time they have. So I'll go to screen time right now and see what we got here.
Well, all right, dude. I don't think you need to be biased. I was just you're asking me, so I
Yeah,
could
I'm just
ask you.
I
I
get
don't
it though.
think I
Definitely
don't think I'm
there's a
being
lot of
very.
people that are addicted to it, but you
I
know,
don't like it,
I'm
and I
just
would say I'm trying to reel back my bias on it because
yeah.
I don't like it,
But
and that's where I
frankly, the
land at
reason
that.
why
I
I
really just think it's bad for everybody, and I mean, so is really a lot of these other ones, but that one's much
yeah, but
more addictive than any of the other ones, and I think that it's negative for everybody, and we should all probably just stop using a lot of this stuff in general, or as much at
it
least, or do it in a
but
healthy way
the
like
thing
this.
is, I personally I do have a bias towards TikTok, not because I'm like addicted to it or something like that, but in certain areas, it's in my rotation, right? I like to watch stuff from all sides of the aisle, like so that's why I have a bunch of stuff that's on the left wing that I listen to. I have a bunch of stuff that's on the right wing that I listen to, and I'll listen to perspectives from other countries as well. Like I was looking into what the people of Turkey believe, and the leader of Turkey recently as well. So when people take away access to one of my data streams, I very much dislike that because first of all, I think that's them calling me stupid. Like I can't filter through the information myself, and I know that there's a lot of people that probably can't. But that doesn't mean I should lose access to information that I can't find anywhere else, right?
I don't think so, but I think yes, if it is a security concern, and I think, I guess part of that is important is that I think my view is that if I don't know how many users are on there, but let's say 100 million US users are on TikTok. That's 100 million US people giving away all of their personal data and how they live their lives and how to like enough to categorize everybody in the US and maybe build out algorithms around how they're gonna vote, what their predictive models are gonna be, and be able to use those to kind of foresee things before America can. Because in America, we are gonna call out our government for doing stuff, and we'll have people that leak stuff. But the CCP, they have somebody that goes and possibly could leak stuff. You never see them again. So I think there's not really a great answer to it because I don't want to cut off free speech. And yeah, I agree with you. We shouldn't have to cut off. But again, that's why I say we just need to incentivize getting it to a place where nobody really has to worry about it. And I don't know if we're there right now. I started looking into this guy, um, and he seems fine, but
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they put him in there because they don't really want to give the perception that they're doing the things that people are saying that they're possibly doing. Um, and that TikTok is a huge economic boon to China, just like they have a couple games that are very popular in the US now. One of them being the Wukong game that came out that sold a lot. Um, there was Genshin Impact, which you may or may not know of, but it was a very popular game in the US. Um, and yeah, those games have different cultural values for sure. Um, but and yes, they have US user data probably in China for that. They have US financial information from people who buy that on the game. Um, we could go real authoritarian and get rid of all these things because of security concerns, or we could fix the problem as a whole, in my mind. Um, so it's beginning to feel a little bit like we're back in the McCarthy era of everybody's a secret communist or everybody's a secret fascist, depending on which side of the aisle you're on. Because it seems like the people on the right have this kind of irrational fear of China, and then the people on the left have this irrational fear of Russia. And I do understand that there are adversaries, but I also think we're out competing them by a long shot at the moment. Um, so I get the concerns, but I don't want to live in the world where people have control of the ability to remove all these things from me. Um, I think I can figure that out for myself.
so you feel like even if so you're fine even if the Chinese government is possibly taking yours and everybody that uses TikTok's data from the backup servers.
If you have some evidence of that, I'll say ban them right now. But nobody does because they're probably not doing it. They're concerned that they might do it. They're not concerned that they are doing it. I really haven't seen that argument made. So, um, and then like we stated before, that the Chinese government's getting our data from a whole bunch of other places, like legitimately. We know it's happening. So, do you really want to focus on the company that we don't know it's happening rather than the companies where we know it's happening? I don't understand the logic. Is it the potential of a problem that we're going after,
I don't.
or is it the
Are we not
problem?
going after the ones that have already been caught?
In a lot of cases, no. I mean,
And if
from what I've
so, then
seen,
for sure we should. And I never would make a case that we should not. And
yeah,
that would need
I'm
to
just saying,
wait.
like
That would be a
there
part of the
is no,
sweeping rule. And I don't
but
really
you,
necessarily have a big issue with the sweeping rule to take care of it all. I just think
yeah,
maybe things that I don't understand of how that might affect global, like they should do it in a way where they tell everyone how long before it's going to take effect so everybody can properly prepare for it and then come to a reasonable agreement. I mean, the TikTok, it's not something I feel super strong about. I kind of like to use it as a way to make a point about us not like caring about us giving our uh, personal user data, which could also be a possible national security concern or just a domestic security concern from our government. And I just don't want any of that. So yeah, maybe we could just do a sweeping thing, but I think you'd have to give
yeah.
people
I think
like
it
a
makes
time
like
frame.
a lot more sense because like there's
Enact it
literally
like
if the
a
CCP,
enact it like a an OSHA or some like agency that sets something out um, like uh, I don't know. They do it with like cars and stuff all the time with emissions. They do it with um, like health things all the time where they're like going to move something off the market by a certain time
hmm.
and
So
like
with
they
that, I
could just
think
do
we
that.
we actually
I think that'd
fully
be the
agree.
best.
Like Let's focus on making a sweeping rule that solves the problem in all areas rather than irrationally focusing on one area that's not going to solve the problem. Like they can get access to all the information they're getting from TikTok through other places and will if they want to. So probably, go after everything rather than just one thing because all they would have to do is just shift their focus to gathering it from their other sources that they have if we ban TikTok. So I really don't see how it makes much of a difference just banning TikTok arbitrarily because they have so many sources where they're collecting information from us. Like it's not. Maybe it would reduce for a time, but they would just shift their resources if they had interest in that. And
True.
that's also noting that we don't have any proof that they have access to the U.S. data from TikTok at all. We don't have any proof of that.
I
Um,
think
so
I think the way they operate is proof enough. I don't think we need to have the proof. We should just suspect it. And I think the sweeping thing would take care of it. And I think the overall thing that we'd also both probably agree on is that we really shouldn't even be arguing about whether TikTok should be banned or not banned. We should be arguing whether
there you
user
go.
data should be able to get used outside of a certain grouping of
Yeah,
things that we all agree to as a society.
that's my complete point. That's exactly what I would rather have people focusing on. I think TikTok is the
But
scapegoat. It's the or what do they call it? It's a red herring. That's actually a better thing to call
yeah,
it is a red herring. It's a distraction to get you to not care about what your governments are doing with your own data. And frankly, I don't understand
that could
why
be
people
true.
would be more afraid of the Chinese government having their data than the US government because the US government has the ability to use it. And we've already seen that they have used it to blackmail people. So I
Yeah,
have no idea why I would rather have the Chinese government have access to it, or why I wouldn't rather have them. I'd rather have
well, I think for what I'm
anybody.
saying is that they could easily just compile that and train an AI model to predict things in the future to help control their narrative that they want in the US. And then they could also influence hopefully not TikTok. Maybe we're past that point. But
Well, I'll say one more thing on that subject. I think this is a losing battle, stopping people from collecting data. I don't even know, like we can try the sweeping rule, but I think it's going to come down to the fact that we actually need to mask user data. And maybe that's something we could talk about in the
yeah, we'll have
future
to do
here.
that at a
Because,
different time.
but
My
like
my
I
headset
truly
here
don't
is low
believe.
on battery.
Yeah, and I am hungry for
Yeah,
food, so I think
makes
that's a good
sense.
place to stop.
Yeah, last thing I'll say is I agree with um, your red herring, but I also think it's a possibility it could be a domino, and that's kind of how I view it. Is you take one step forward with something, and that gets the ball rolling. And I kind of view that along with the populism movement of trying to control our government through that people again, like directly almost. And I
Absolutely.
but that's something maybe we could dive deeper into as well. But anyway, dude, nice talk. Um,
Yep.
Thanks for listening. If you guys made it this far, and have a good night.